Give me the leftovers and I'll teach you how to walk. She said it without fear, and he, a millionaire trapped in a wheelchair, just laughed. Little did he know that those words would change his life. If you love stories of love and romance, watch until the end. Subscribe to this channel and leave a comment telling us where you're listening from. The rain drummed against the armored windows of the black Mercedes-Benz, creating a monotonous rhythm that echoed the emptiness Edward Morrison felt in his chest. The neon lights of the restaurants in Greenwich Village reflected in the puddles on Harmony Street, painting the wet asphalt with colors he had long lost the ability to appreciate. "Mr. Morrison, may I turn on the air conditioning now?" asked Ronald, his driver for over 10 years, adjusting the rearview mirror to observe his boss. Edward only moved his eyes, fixing them on the chauffeur's hunched figure. "No need, I'm fine." But he wasn't fine. Nothing had been fine since that April morning, 3 years ago, when the accident changed everything. The architectural project he was reviewing, the urgent call he needed to answer, the miscalculated turn on the interstate. In seconds, Edward Morrison went from being one of the most influential entrepreneurs in the technology sector to a man confined to a wheelchair, observing the world through armored windows. The business dinner at the Sky Lounge had been a sequence of false courtesies and calculated smiles. The Japanese investors seemed more interested in testing his emotional resilience than discussing Mendonça Tech's expansion into the Asian market. Edward knew when he was being underestimated, and today was no different. They questioned his leadership ability, made subtle jokes about adapting to circumstances, and made it clear they preferred to negotiate with his vice president. "Home. Ronald," he murmured, massaging his temples where a throbbing pain had settled. The Mercedes glided through the deserted early-morning city streets. Edward closed his eyes, trying to ward off memories of the time when he walked these same streets, planning the future of the company he had built from scratch. Now at 42, he felt like an observer of his own life. That's when Ronald braked sharply. "Sorry, sir. There's a child rummaging through the trash up ahead." Edward opened his eyes and followed the driver's gaze. Near a recently closed restaurant, a small figure moved among stacked garbage bags on the sidewalk. The rain had slowed to a fine drizzle, but it was still enough to drench anyone on the street. "It's just a street child, Ronald. Keep going." But something made him hesitate. Perhaps it was the determined way the girl rummaged through the bags unhurriedly, as if she knew exactly what she was looking for. Or perhaps it was the way she didn't flinch when the car's headlights illuminated her. Instead, she raised her face and looked directly at him through the window. Even from a distance and in the rain, Edward could see the child's eyes. Large, dark, but without the despair he expected to find. There was something else there, a spark that intrigued him. "Wait," he said to Ronald, who had already started moving again. "Stop the car." The driver obeyed, clearly confused. In all the years he had worked for Edward, he had never seen him show interest in people on the street, much less vulnerable children. Edward watched the girl for a few seconds. She must have been about 8 or 9 years old, with curly hair tied in a messy ponytail, simple but relatively clean clothes. She didn't seem scared or desperate. On the contrary, there was a dignity in her movements that contrasted with the situation. "Open the window," he ordered. "Sir?" "Open the window, Ronald." The glass lowered with a soft electronic hum, letting in the smell of rain and wet asphalt. The girl stopped what she was doing and walked to the car with confident steps, as if she had been expecting it. "Good evening," she said, resting her hands on the window. Her voice was clear, without the pleading tone Edward had imagined. "Are you all right?" The question caught him off guard. Yes, and you? What are you doing on the street at this hour?" "Looking for dinner," she replied naturally. "The restaurant there closed, and sometimes they throw out good food. My mum is working the night shift cleaning the mall, and I didn't want to stay home alone." Edward felt a strange discomfort in his chest. "Shouldn't you be in school tomorrow?" The girl smiled, and it was a genuine smile without malice or calculation. "It's Saturday, sir. No school." Of course, Edward had lost track of the days of the week a long time ago. For him, they all seemed the same. Meetings, reports, therapies, medications, loneliness. "What's your name?" he asked. "Luna, and yours?" "Edward." Luna nodded, as if committing the information to memory. "Edward, can I ask you a question?" He hesitated. How long had it been since someone asked his permission to ask something, instead of simply demanding answers? "You may. Why do you seem so sad?" The question hit Edward like a punch to the stomach. Ronald cleared his throat uncomfortably in the front seat, but Edward barely heard him. How had that child seen through all his defenses in a matter of minutes? I'm not sad, he lied. Luna tilted her head, studying his face with a seriousness that didn't match her age. "My mom says everyone carries sadness sometimes, but it doesn't have to live inside us forever." Edward swallowed hard. There was something in the simplicity of that statement that unsettled him deep inside. "Your mom seems to know things." "She knows a lot," Luna agreed. "She also says that sometimes people stop walking even when their legs work." The silence that followed was heavy. Edward felt as if that girl had just read his soul like an open book. How was it possible that a child from the city's outskirts understood his condition better than all the therapists and doctors who attended him? "Do you want me to help you walk again?" Luna asked, with the same naturalness as someone offering a glass of water to a visitor. Edward almost smiled for the first time in weeks. "How would you do that?" "I don't know yet," she admitted, shrugging. "But when I find food here, I can share it with you. My mum says that when we share what we have, even if it's little, there's always room for good things to happen." There was something deeply touching in that girl's offer. She was looking for scraps of food in the trash, but she offered to share with him, a man who could buy the entire restaurant if he wanted. Edward looked at Ronald in the rear-view mirror and saw his own surprise reflected in the driver's eyes. In 3 years in a wheelchair, no one had offered him help so spontaneously and selflessly. "Luna," Edward said, trying to keep his voice steady, "would you like me to take you home? And maybe we can stop somewhere for you to have a proper dinner." The girl frowned, thoughtful. "My mom always says not to accept rides from strangers. She's right. But what if I promise you can call her before we get in the car? And my driver, Ronald, has a daughter your age." "Don't you, Ronald?" "Yes, Sir Beatrice. She's 9 now." Luna evaluated the proposal, her gaze going from Edward to Ronald and back to Edward. There was a sharp intelligence behind those dark eyes, a capacity for judgment that was impressive in someone so young. "All right," she finally decided, "but only if you promise that after this I'll help you walk again." Edward felt something stir in his chest, a forgotten sensation that took him a moment to identify. It was hope, he realized with surprise. For the first time in 3 years, someone believed he could get better, that he could have a full life again. "I promise," he said, extending his hand through the window. Luna squeezed his hand with her own, small and wet from the rain, but surprisingly firm. "Then we have a deal, Edward." As Ronald helped Luna into the car, Edward looked out the window at the empty city streets and felt that something fundamental had changed that night. He didn't know yet what it was, but for the first time in a long time, he was curious about what tomorrow would bring. 3 days passed since the encounter in the rain, but Edward couldn't get Luna out of his head. The promise he had made seemed to echo through the silent walls of his mansion in Belgravia, a constant reminder that he had made a commitment he didn't fully understand himself. On Tuesday morning, after another frustrating physiotherapy session with Dr. Henry, Edward made a decision that surprised even Ronald. "I want to go back to that neighborhood where we dropped off the girl," he announced, adjusting himself in the adapted wheelchair in his home office. Ronald raised his eyebrows. "Are you sure, sir?" "It's a very simple neighborhood in Eastchester. I'm sure." During physiotherapy, Dr. Henry had insisted on the same old refrain: exercises, discipline, acceptance. But Luna's words kept resonating in his mind. Sometimes people stop walking even when their legs work. How could a 9-year-old child have more clarity about his situation than a specialist with 40 years of experience? The drive to Eastchester took almost an hour in the heavy afternoon city traffic. Edward watched through the window the gradual transformation of the urban landscape, from the mirrored buildings of Wall Street to the simple houses of the outskirts, from manicured gardens to small backyards full of clothes on the line. It was a world he knew only from reports and statistics. His company had developed social projects before, but always mediated by consultants and partner organizations. Edward had never set foot in a community like that. "It's there, sir," Ronald indicated, pointing to a housing complex of low-rise buildings painted in faded colors. Edward felt a pang in his stomach. How had Luna managed to keep him awake for 3 consecutive nights? Why did the promise made to that girl seem more important than all the multi-million-dollar contracts he had? Signed in recent years. They found Luna playing with other children on a small court between the buildings. She wore a simple blue dress and worn-out sneakers, but her smile was the same one that had lit up the rainy Saturday night. "Edward!" she shouted, running towards the car as soon as she recognized it. "You came. I promised I'd help you walk again, remember?" she said, reaching the window with the same selflessness as before. Edward smiled, a strange sensation his facial muscles seemed to have forgotten how to make. "And I promised. That's why I'm here. My mom just got home from work. Do you want to meet her?" The invitation caught him off guard, but Edward nodded. Ronald helped him out of the car and into his wheelchair, while Luna guided them through the inner courtyard of the housing complex. The apartment was on the 3rd floor, and Edward had to use a borrowed wheelchair from the building to go up the makeshift ramp that some residents had built. Luna climbed the stairs 2 by 2, talking animatedly about school, friends, dreams. "Mom, look who came to visit us," Luna announced, pushing open the front door. The woman who appeared in the living room made Edward momentarily lose his breath. Carla Sterling must have been about 35, with curly hair tied in a bun, striking features that blended strength and delicacy. She wore the blue uniform of the cleaning company, but there was a dignity in her posture that contrasted with the simplicity of her clothes. "Luna, you can't bring people home without telling me," Carla said, but her voice wasn't scolding. It was careful, cautious. "Mom, this is Edward, the one I told you about, the one who can't walk properly." Edward felt his face flush at Luna's direct description, but Carla surprised him with a genuine smile. "Excuse Luna's bluntness, Mr. Edward Morrison," he introduced himself. "And no need for apologies. Your daughter has a gift for getting straight to the point." Carla studied him for a moment, her intelligent eyes assessing everything from the imported wheelchair to the Swiss watch on his wrist. "Luna told me you two made a deal." "We did. She's going to help me walk again." "And how does she intend to do that?" Carla asked, crossing her arms. It wasn't hostility, Edward realized, but maternal protection. Luna jumped in before Edward could answer. "I don't know yet, Mom, but I'll figure it out." "Edward is very sad, and when people are very sad, they stop moving properly." Carla sighed and invited Edward in. The apartment was small but meticulously organized. The walls were decorated with Luna's drawings and family photos. A makeshift bookshelf held a few books and a small television. In the corner of the living room, there was a study table where notebooks and pencils were neatly arranged. "May I offer you some coffee?" Carla asked. "If it's no trouble." While Carla prepared coffee in the open-plan kitchen, Luna showed Edward her drawings on the refrigerator. They were colorful drawings of sunflowers, houses with gardens, happy families under the sun. "Do you like sunflowers?" Edward asked. "I love them. They always look at the sun, even when it's cloudy. My mom says we need to be like sunflowers." Edward looked at the drawing more closely. It was surprisingly detailed for a 9-year-old, with a technique that showed natural talent. Carla returned with the coffee, serving it in simple but clean cups. Edward noticed her hands, calloused from work, but also the delicacy with which she handled the crockery. "Luna told me you're an entrepreneur," Carla commented, sitting on the small sofa. "I am. I own a technology company." "And what brought you to our neighborhood?" The question was direct, without beating around the bush. Edward hesitated. How to explain that he had been touched by Luna's simplicity? That for the first time in 3 years, someone had offered help without expecting anything in return. "Your daughter made me an interesting proposition," he finally said. "And I want to understand better how she intends to fulfill it." Carla exchanged a look with Luna, a silent communication between mother and daughter. "Luna has always been different. Since she was little, she sees things that other people don't." "What kind of things?" "She can sense when someone needs help, even when that person doesn't know they need it." Edward sipped his coffee, feeling the strong, full-bodied taste. It was much better than the special coffee his cook made every morning. "Mom makes the best coffee in the world," Luna declared, sitting on the floor beside Edward's chair. "It's true," he agreed, surprised by the sincerity of his words. Carla watched him carefully. "May I ask you a personal question, Mr. Edward?" "You may. What happened to your legs?" Luna gently elbowed her mother. "Mom, that's not polite." But Edward wasn't offended. There was something refreshing about the direct honesty of that family. I had a car accident 3 years ago. Spinal cord injury. And the doctors said you'll never walk again? They said the chances are minimal. Luna stood up from the floor with determination. But I'm not a doctor, so I can think differently. Edward laughed, a genuine laugh that echoed through the small apartment. When was the last time he had laughed like that? Luna is right, Carla said, smiling too. Sometimes people who aren't specialists can see solutions that specialists don't. They talked for another 2 hours. Edward discovered that Carla had studied business, administration, but dropped out of college. When she became pregnant with Luna, she worked as a cleaner at 3 different jobs to maintain the house and pay for Luna's private school. Why do you work so hard to pay for private school? Edward asked. Because Luna is special. She has a talent that needs to be developed, Carla replied, stroking her daughter's hair. Education is the only real inheritance I can leave her. Edward felt a pang in his chest. When was the last time someone had invested so much effort in his potential? His parents always had enough money to pay for the best schools, but they had never made personal sacrifices for his education. What kind of talent? He insisted. She draws very well, as you saw, but the main thing is that she can make people feel better just by talking to them. Edward looked at Luna, who was organizing her colored pencils in a small box. It was true. In a few hours of interaction, he felt lighter than he had in months. Luna, he called her, how do you intend to help me walk again? She stopped organizing the pencils and looked at him seriously. First, you need to truly want to walk, not just with your legs. What do you mean? You need to want to get out of the chair here. She touched her own chest. Before you get out of the real chair. Edward swallowed hard. Once again, that girl had gone straight to the heart of the matter with a precision that scared him. And how do you know I don't want to? Because you talk about your legs as if they belong to someone else. And you don't smile with your eyes. Carla watched the conversation in silence, a mixture of pride and concern on her face. Edward realized she was assessing whether she could trust him with her daughter's sensitive heart. Luna, Edward said, carefully choosing his words, if I agree to let you help me, what would you like in return? The question seemed to confuse her. In return? Yes, what do you want? Toys, clothes? A better house? Luna frowned as if he had asked a very strange question. I just want you to be happy again. The silence that followed was heavy with emotion. Edward felt his eyes well up, a sensation he had suppressed for so long that he had almost forgotten what it was like. But, Luna added, if you want, you can help my mum study again. She always wanted to finish college. Edward looked at Carla, who was visibly embarrassed. Luna, that's none of your business. Of course it is. You're my mom, and I want you to be happy too. Edward had an idea that surprised him with its audacity and the clarity with which it formed in his mind. Carla, he said, would you like to work at my company? The proposal left Carla silent for long seconds. Edward watched emotions alternate on her face. Surprise, distrust, hope, and finally caution. What kind of work? She asked, her voice carefully controlled. We're developing a new social project at the company. Technological inclusion for low-income communities. I need someone who truly understands the needs of these communities, not just theoretically. Mr. Edward, Carla said, straightening her posture. I appreciate your offer, but I don't accept charity. It's not charity, Edward replied, impressed by her firmness. It's work. With salary, responsibilities, and expectations. If I wanted to do charity, I'd give money. I'm talking about a professional position. Luna jumped between the two, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Mom, you always said your chance would come. Carla held her daughter's hands, trying to contain her own emotion. Luna, these things aren't that simple. Why not? The girl insisted. Edward needs someone who understands poor people, and you do. He needs someone intelligent, and you're the smartest person I know. It seems simple to me. Edward smiled at Luna's impeccable logic. She's right, you know. I have consultants who know technology, but they've never lived the reality of our future users. You would have a unique perspective. Carla walked to the small living room window, watching the children playing in the courtyard below. Edward noticed the tension in her shoulders, the internal conflict she was fighting. What exactly would my role be? She asked without turning around. Community Development Coordinator. You would help map the real needs of communities, develop implementation strategies, and bridge the gap between our technical team and the target audience. And the required education? Practical experience is worth more than a degree in this case. But if you wish, the company can cover the cost of you completing your college degree. Carla slowly turned, studying Edward's face carefully. Why are you doing this? It was a fair question, and Edward took a moment to find an honest answer. Because your daughter made me a promise, and I believe that you two can teach me things I've forgotten. What kind of things? Edward looked at Luna, who was sitting on the floor organizing her sunflower drawings. How to find purpose. How to connect with real people. How to live again. The silence that followed was interrupted by Luna's soft voice. Mom, remember when you said that sometimes God sends opportunities disguised as strangers? Carla laughed, finally relaxing a little. You have too good a memory for a 9-year-old. So, are you going to accept? Carla turned to Edward. I accept, but with conditions. I'm listening. First condition, I want autonomy to do my job my way. If you're hiring my life experience, you need to trust it. Edward nodded. Agreed. Second condition, I don't want special treatment because of Luna. In a professional environment, I am Carla Sterling, an employee of the company, not the mother of the girl you met on the street. Fair. Third condition, I want to be evaluated by the same criteria as other employees. If I don't perform, you fire me without a guilty conscience. Edward extended his hand. Deal. Carla shook his hand, a firm grip that sealed more than a professional agreement. It was the beginning of a partnership that neither of them could foresee where it would lead. When can I start? She asked. Next Monday. But first, I'd like you to see the company. And my house. Luna jumped off the floor like a spring. We're going to see your house, Edward. Is it very big? Luna, that's not polite, Carla reprimanded. It's fine, Edward laughed. It's quite big, Luna. Bigger than it needs to be for one person. Do you live alone? The girl asked with the natural curiosity of her age. I do. For 3 years. That's a long time to be alone. Don't you get sad? Edward felt that sensation again of being read like an open book by a child. Sometimes I do. Then you need visitors. My mom always says a house without visitors is a house without joy. Carla blushed slightly. Luna, you can't invite yourself to people's houses. But I didn't invite myself, Luna protested. I just said he needs visitors. If he wants to invite us, that's different. Edward looked at the two women who, in a few hours, had turned his life upside down. The mother, strong and dignified, who fought every day to give her daughter a better future. The daughter, wise beyond her years, who saw the world with disconcerting clarity. Would you like to have dinner at my house tomorrow? He asked. That way Carla can learn a little more about the company before she starts working. Luna clapped her hands, but Carla hesitated. Mr. Edward, wouldn't that be too informal for a professional relationship? Edward, he corrected her, and I believe getting to know the people we'll be working with is always a good idea. Besides, I have an excellent cook who hasn't had the chance to cook for guests in years. Please, Mom, Luna pleaded. I've never seen a real mansion. Carla relented with a sigh. All right. But if we're coming to your house, I want to contribute something. You don't have to. I do. I'll bring a dessert. Edward wanted to protest, but something in Carla's tone made him understand that it was important to her. It was a matter of dignity, of not just being a recipient of favors. All right. Can Ronald pick you up at 7? We can take the bus, Carla said. Mom, it's too far, Luna reminded her. And besides, Edward has a very kind driver. Edward laughed. Ronald will be flattered to know you like him. When they said goodbye an hour later, Edward felt strangely energized. It had been a long time since he had made plans that involved other people. His routine had become a mechanical sequence of professional commitments and medical therapies. On the way back home, Ronald broke the silence that had settled in the car. Sir, if I may say so, it's been a long time since I've seen you so animated. Edward watched the urban landscape through the window, noticing details he hadn't perceived in a long time. The ice cream vendor on the corner, children returning from school, the lady watering plants on her balcony. Ronald, do you think I changed a lot after the accident? The driver thought for a moment before answering. You were always a serious person, focused on work. But after the accident, it's as if you built a wall around yourself. And today? Today I saw a bit of the man you were before. The one who laughed at his own jokes during meetings, who cared about his employees. Edward reflected on Ronald's words. Could Luna be right, that some people stopped walking even when their legs worked? Arriving at the mansion, Edward instructed Mrs. Constance, his cook, about dinner the next day. The 60-year-old woman who had worked for him for over a decade couldn't hide her surprise. Guests, Mr. Edward. It's been so long. Indeed, Constance. A mother and daughter. The girl is 9 years old and likes sunflowers. Sunflowers? Yes. Perhaps you could make some sunflower decorations for the table. Constance smiled, a smile that lit up her face marked by the years. Of course, sir. It will be a pleasure to have children in the house again. Edward spent the rest of the afternoon reviewing plans for the Technological Inclusion Project. For the first time, he wasn't just thinking about numbers and metrics, but about real people, about Luna, about Carla, about all the families like them who could benefit from technology if it was presented in the right way. That night, before going to sleep, Edward did something he hadn't done in a long time. He looked to the future with anticipation instead of resignation. Tomorrow would be different. He didn't know exactly how, but he felt that Luna was fulfilling her promise to help him walk again. And for the second night in a row, Edward fell asleep smiling. Edward's mansion in Belgravia had never seemed so large and silent as it did that Wednesday afternoon. He moved through the rooms in his wheelchair, seeing the space through Luna's eyes. Would it be too intimidating for a child? Would the white walls and minimalist decor seem cold? Mr. Edward, everything is ready, Mrs. Constance announced, appearing at the entrance to the main living room. I got fresh sunflowers at the market and arranged them on the table as you requested. Edward followed her to the dining room and felt an unexpected emotion. Constance had transformed the formal environment into something welcoming. The yellow sunflowers contrasted beautifully with the cream linen tablecloth, and she had lit candles that created a warm atmosphere. It's perfect, Constance. Thank you. The cook smiled, adjusting one of the sunflowers. It's good to have a child in the house, sir. This mansion needs laughter. At 7 o'clock sharp, Ronald brought Carla and Luna. Edward waited at the main door, nervous in a way he hadn't felt since his college days. Why had the opinion of those two women become so important to him? Luna got out of the car with wide eyes, slowly spinning to absorb the magnitude of the property. Edward, your house is beautiful. It looks like a castle. Carla got out more cautiously, carrying a tray covered with a dish towel. Edward noticed that she had exchanged her work uniform for a simple but elegant dress, and had tied her hair in a low bun that highlighted her striking features. Welcome to my home, Edward said, moving towards them. Edward, how many rooms are there here? Luna asked, still craning her neck to see every detail of the facade. Luna, that's very personal, Carla murmured, embarrassed. It's fine, Edward laughed. There are 12 rooms, Luna. 12? The girl stopped spinning and stared at him in disbelief. Why do you need 12 rooms if you live alone? A good question. I guess I don't really need them. Carla extended the tray to him. I brought condensed milk pudding. It's Luna's specialty. I made most of it, Luna declared proudly. My mom just helped me with the stove. I'm sure it's delicious, Edward said, touched by the gesture. Shall we go in? The interior of the mansion made an even greater impact. Luna walked slowly, delicately touching the furniture, observing the paintings on the walls, marveling at the architectural details. Why is everything so white? She asked, stopping in front of a modern sculpture. I never thought about it, Edward admitted. My mom always says a house needs color to have life. Your house is very elegant, but it seems a bit sad. Carla hurried to reprimand her daughter, but Edward raised his hand. She's right. I stopped noticing colors a long time ago. Can I help you choose new colors? Luna offered, with the naturalness of someone offering a glass of water. Luna! Carla exclaimed, mortified. You can't redecorate people's houses. Why not? If he needs more color and I like colors, I can help. Edward looked at the girl with her impeccable logic and generous heart and felt something stir in his chest. Perhaps we can talk about it after dinner. The dining room drew an enchanted gasp from Luna. The sunflowers. Edward, you remembered. Actually, it was Mrs. Constance's idea. Luna, Carla, this is Constance. who has taken care of the house for many years. The cook appeared from the kitchen door, wiping her hands on her apron, a warm smile on her face. It's a great pleasure to meet you. It's been a long time since we've had children here. Luna approached Constance with curiosity. Did you cook everything, ma'am? I did, dear. I hope you like it. I'm sure we will. You look like a grandma who knows how to cook delicious food. Constance laughed, clearly delighted. Oh, what a clever girl. Do you want to see the kitchen? While Luna followed Constance for a tour of the kitchen, Edward and Carla remained alone in the dining room. A comfortable silence settled between them. Your house is truly impressive, Carla commented, observing the details of the crystal chandelier. It's too big, Edward admitted. I bought it thinking about starting a family, but things didn't turn out as I planned. Were you married? Edward hesitated. It had been years since he had talked about Marina with anyone. For 5 years. She left me 6 months after the accident. I'm sorry. Don't be. She was right. I became an impossible person to live with. Carla studied him carefully. And now? Now, I don't know. Your daughter told me I need to want to walk with my heart before I walk with my legs. I'm trying to understand what that means. Luna has her own way of seeing the world, Carla said with a soft smile. Sometimes I think she understands things that adults spend years trying to figure out. Luna ran back from the kitchen, interrupting the conversation. Edward, Mrs. Constance let me help serve the salad. And she has a herb garden. Can we see it after dinner? Of course. Dinner was a revelation for Edward. For years his meals had been silent, mechanical, solitary. Now the table was alive with Luna's animated conversation, Carla's intelligent observations, and even the timid contributions of Constance, who joined them for coffee. Luna talked about school, her friends, her dreams of being an artist. Carla spoke about her work, her expectations for the new position, her ideas about technological inclusion. Edward found himself laughing more that night than he had in months. Edward, Luna said during dessert, can I ask a question? Always. Why don't you have pictures of happy people in your house? Edward looked around, noticing for the first time that all the paintings were abstract or gloomy landscapes. I never noticed. Pictures of happy people make us feel less lonely, Luna explained seriously. In our house we have photos of me and my mom smiling in every corner. She's right, Carla agreed. Positive images affect our mood. Could you two help me choose new paintings? Edward asked. Of course, Luna exclaimed, clapping her hands. And we can paint some too. I know how to make very beautiful sunflowers. After dinner, Edward took his guests to see the garden. It was a spacious and well-maintained area, but too formal, with plants pruned into perfect geometric shapes. What an organized garden, Carla commented diplomatically. Very organized, Luna agreed. Where are the flowers that grow by themselves? Flowers that grow by themselves? Yes, the ones that sprout wherever they want that make the garden look truly alive. Edward looked at his garden with new eyes. It was beautiful, but there was nothing spontaneous or joyful about it. Would you like to help me plant some? Can I really? Luna, you can't take on so much responsibility, Carla intervened. Mr. Edward has professional gardeners. Please, Mom. I promise to take good care of them. Edward felt a strange emotion seeing Luna's enthusiasm. When was the last time someone had been so excited about something in his house? How about we start with sunflowers? He suggested. You said they always look for the sun. Even on cloudy days, Luna completed, radiant. They will make your garden much happier. That night, after Ronald took Carla and Luna back home, Edward walked around the mansion, seeing it through the eyes of his new friend. Luna was right about many things. The house was beautiful but cold, elegant but lifeless, rich but poor in joy. Mrs. Constance appeared to say goodbye before going to her quarters. Mr. Edward, it's been so long since I've heard you laugh so much. Constance, do you think this house looks sad? The cook considered the question carefully. Not sad, sir, empty, as if it were waiting for life. And what do you think about having more visitors like today? Constance's face lit up. I think it would be wonderful, sir. The house is much warmer with children's laughter. That night, Edward did something unprecedented. Instead of reviewing reports or watching the news, he picked up a notepad and began to make a list of changes he would like to make to the house. More color, more life, more joy. At the top of the list he wrote, "Plant sunflowers with Luna." It was a simple beginning, but he felt it was the first step of a larger journey. Luna had promised to help him walk again, and perhaps that began with small steps like those. For the second night in a row, Edward fell asleep smiling. Carla's first day of work at Mendonça Tech began with a storm of curious glances and discreet whispers. Edward had carefully prepared her presentation for the executive team, but he still felt the tension in the air as he led Carla through the elegant corridors of the company's headquarters in Canary Wharf. "Everyone," he announced in the meeting room, "I'd like to introduce Carla Sterling, our new Community Development Coordinator." The 8 executives present studied Carla with thinly disguised attention. Edward noticed some doubtful looks, especially from Vice President Richard Allen, a 50-year-old man who had always questioned his decisions since the accident. "Carla has unique practical experience working with low-income communities," Edward continued. "She will be responsible for ensuring that our social projects are truly effective." "What is your academic background, Carla?" Richard asked, his tone seemingly polite but with a hint of skepticism. "Incomplete administration degree from City University," Carla replied confidently. "But my main qualification is having lived the reality of our future users for 35 years. "Interesting approach," Richard murmured, exchanging glances with other executives. Anna Beatrice, the Human Resources Director, was more welcoming. "Welcome to the team, Carla. I'm eager to hear your perspectives on our projects." Over the next 2 weeks, Carla proved to be everything Edward had imagined and more. Her analyses of existing projects were precise and insightful. She identified problems that no external consultant had noticed and suggested practical solutions that demonstrated deep knowledge of the community's reality. "The computer labs you install are impressive," she said during a planning meeting, "but they remain empty because mothers have nowhere to leave their young children while taking the courses." "And what would be your suggestion?" Edward asked. "Integrated kids space. It doesn't have to be elaborate, just a safe corner with educational toys and a supervisor. That would double our participation." The suggestion was implemented in the pilot project in Eastchester, and within a week demand for the courses tripled. Edward watched Carla work with growing admiration. She arrived early, stayed late when necessary, and treated every project as if she were personally responsible for its success. More importantly, she brought a humanity to the projects that had been lost amidst spreadsheets and indicators. "Carla is revolutionizing our approach," Anna Beatrice commented to Edward after a meeting. "Her ideas are brilliant." "I knew she would be," Edward replied, feeling a special satisfaction in seeing Carla excel. However, not everyone in the company was equally impressed. Richard made subtle comments about lack of scientific methodology and constantly questioned Carla's proposals in meetings. "We need more robust data," he would say whenever Carla presented an idea based on her practical experience. "We can't make decisions based solely on personal impressions." Edward perceived the growing tension, but Carla seemed to handle the resistance well. She responded to criticism with concrete data from pilot projects and measurable results that spoke for themselves. The situation reached a breaking point on a Friday in December. Luna had left school early due to a pedagogical meeting and, as agreed, stopped by the company to wait for her mother to finish work. Edward had grown accustomed to Luna's visits. She always brought life to the sterile corridors of the company, greeting employees, asking curious questions about technology, and drawing in Edward's office while he worked. That day, while Edward was in a meeting on the 20th floor, Luna stayed in the reception area on the 15th floor, where Carla's department was located. She had brought her colored pencils and was drawing on the coffee table when something caught her attention. It was a crystal sculpture in the reception, a transparent prism that refracted sunlight into small rainbows on the walls. Luna approached, fascinated by the dancing colors, and delicately touched the piece to see how the light changed angle. "Hey, get your hands off that!" The harsh voice startled Luna, and she quickly backed away. Richard Allen was stepping out of the elevator, with 2 Japanese clients, his face red with irritation. "That piece costs £15,000, he said, examining the sculpture for damage. "It's not a toy." "Sorry, sir," Luna murmured, her big eyes filling with tears. "I was just looking at the colors." "Looking?" Richard looked around the reception, noticing the drawings scattered on the table. "What are you doing here? This is no place for street children." The words hit Luna like a slap. She recoiled further, tripping over her school backpack and almost falling. Carla came out of her office at that exact moment, drawn by the commotion. She saw her daughter in tears, Richard with clenched fists, and the Japanese clients observing the scene uncomfortably. "Luna, what happened?" Carla asked, rushing to her daughter. "Your daughter was tampering with company property," Richard said coldly. "I suggest you keep her under control or find another place to leave her." Carla felt her blood boil, but she took a deep breath. She was in a work environment with clients present. "Luna, gather your things. We're leaving." "Mom, I was just looking," Luna whispered, still trembling. "I know, love. It wasn't your fault." Carla helped Luna collect her drawings, her hands trembling with suppressed anger. When she stood up, she looked Richard directly in the eyes. "Mr. Allen, my daughter would never intentionally damage anything. She is a polite and curious child." "Curious children should be supervised by their parents," Richard retorted, especially in corporate environments. The tension in the air was palpable. Reception staff stopped working to observe the confrontation. The Japanese clients whispered among themselves, clearly uncomfortable. Carla took Luna's hand and walked towards the elevator, but stopped before entering. "Mr. Allen," she said, her voice calm but firm, "I hope one day you have children, and understand that curiosity is a gift, not a flaw." The elevator doors closed, taking mother and daughter away. Edward learned of the incident 20 minutes later, when Anna Beatrice called his cell phone during the meeting. "Edward, there was a problem on the 15th floor. Richard had a confrontation with Carla and her daughter." Edward felt his blood run cold. "What kind of confrontation?" "He called the girl a street child in front of clients. Carla took Luna away and hasn't returned." Edward ended the meeting abruptly and went down to Carla's department. He found her office empty, with some belongings still on the desk as if she had left in a hurry. "Where did they go?" he asked the receptionist. "Miss Sterling said she needed to think about some things," the employee replied, clearly uncomfortable. She seemed very upset. Edward felt a rage he hadn't felt in years. It wasn't just professional indignation. It was something much more personal. Someone had hurt Luna, the girl who was helping him rediscover life. Someone had humiliated Carla, the woman who was revolutionizing his company with intelligence and dedication. He went up to Richard's office, entering without knocking. "We need to talk," Edward said, closing the door behind him. Richard was on the phone, but he hung up when he saw the expression on his boss's face. "Edward, if it's about that incident downstairs, it's exactly about that. The child was touching valuable objects. I merely—" "You humiliated a 9-year-old child in front of employees and clients," Edward interrupted, his voice controlled but cold. "A child who is the daughter of our most competent employee. Edward, be realistic. We can't have children running around the company. It's unprofessional." "Unprofessional is treating a curious child as if she were a delinquent." Richard sighed, adopting a condescending tone. "Look, I understand you have sympathy for them, but this business of hiring people without adequate qualifications for important positions—" "Stop right there," Edward cut him off, feeling his anger finally explode. "Carla Sterling has more qualifications for her position than you did when I hired you 10 years ago. The difference is that she had to fight for every opportunity, while everything was handed to you on a silver platter. That's not fair. What's not fair is a child being treated as an intruder in the company where her mother works. What's not fair is a 50-year-old man intimidating a 9-year-old girl." Edward took a deep breath, trying to control his emotions. "Richard, you are suspended for a week. Use this time to reflect on values and respect." "Edward, you can't be serious. Because of a child. I am serious because of our values as a company. If we can't treat a child with kindness, how are we going to serve entire communities?" Edward left the room, leaving Richard speechless. For the first time in 3 years, he had made a decision based purely on personal values, not corporate convenience. Now he needed to find Carla and Luna, and hope it wasn't too late to fix the damage. Edward found Carla and Luna in the small park near the housing complex where they lived. Luna was on the swing, but she was swinging slowly without her usual joy. Carla was sitting on a nearby bench, looking at the horizon with a thoughtful expression. Ronald had parked the car at the park entrance, and Edward maneuvered his wheelchair along the dirt path. Some children stopped playing to observe the elegant man in the expensive chair, but soon returned to their activities. "May I join you?" Edward asked, approaching the bench where Carla was sitting. Carla looked at him, surprised to see him there. "Edward, what are you doing here?" "I came to apologize." "And to talk." Luna got off the swing and walked slowly towards them. Her eyes were still red from crying, but she tried to smile when she saw him. "Hi, Edward. You didn't have to come all this way." "Yes, I did, Luna. Someone was very rude to you today, and I wanted you to know that that doesn't represent what our company believes in." Carla sighed, running her hand through her loose hair. "Edward, maybe I deluded myself into thinking that world could be for us." "What world?" "The corporate world. People like that man will always see us as intruders. Luna and we are strangers in that environment." Edward felt a tightness in his chest. "Carla, you are one of the most competent employees we've ever had. In 2 weeks, you revolutionized 3 projects that had been stagnant for months. Competence isn't enough when you don't have the right profile, Edward. I knew that when I accepted the offer, but I thought things could be different." Luna approached Edward, delicately touching the arm of his chair. "Edward, did I do something wrong?" "No, Luna, you didn't do anything wrong. You are a curious and intelligent girl, and any company should feel honored to have you as a visitor." "Then why did that man yell at me?" Edward looked at Carla, silently asking permission to be honest with Luna. Carla nodded almost imperceptibly. "Because sometimes adult people are afraid of different things, and when they are afraid, they act ugly." "Afraid of me?" "Not of you specifically, Luna. Afraid of what you represent. You show that special people can come from anywhere, and that scares those who think only certain people can be special." Luna processed the explanation with her typical seriousness. "That doesn't make much sense." "It doesn't," Edward agreed. "That's why I suspended Mr. Allen for a week." Carla looked at him with surprise. "You did what?" "Suspended him. He humiliated a child in front of employees and clients. That is not acceptable under any circumstances." "Edward, you didn't have to." "Yes, I did. Carla, you told me you wanted to be evaluated by the same criteria as other employees. Well, if any employee brought a child to the company and they were treated that way, I would do the same thing." Carla was silent for a moment, watching Luna, who had returned to the swing. "Even so, maybe it's better if I look for another job." "I don't want Luna to go through that again. What if I guaranteed she wouldn't?" "How?" Edward took a deep breath. The idea had formed in his mind during the journey there, but only now did he find the courage to verbalize it. "What if we made Luna an official part of the project? Not as an employee, of course, but as a junior consultant." "Edward, that's crazy." "It's brilliant," he corrected her. "Think about it, Carla. Who better to test if our projects really work for children than a real child? Luna could help us develop more intuitive interfaces, more engaging activities." Luna stopped swinging, clearly interested in the conversation. "What are you talking about?" Edward turned his chair to face her. "Luna, would you like to help my company create better programs for children?" "What do you mean?" "You would test our educational games, give your opinion on the colors and designs, tell us if the activities are fun or boring." Luna's eyes began to sparkle again. "Would that be like a real job?" "It would be a real job, with a business card and everything." Carla shook her head, but Edward noticed a discreet smile at the corners of her mouth. "Edward, are you suggesting hiring a 9-year-old child?" "I'm suggesting officially recognizing what Luna has already been doing informally. She has valuable insights into how children think and learn. And what will other people say? The right people will understand that innovation comes from different perspectives. The wrong people, well, they'll always have something to complain about anyway." Luna jumped off the swing and ran to Edward. "Can I really have a business card?" "You can. What title would you like to appear?" Luna thought for a moment with the seriousness of someone making an important decision. "Child Happiness Specialist." Edward laughed, feeling genuine joy for the first time in a long time. "Child Happiness Specialist, perfect." Carla got up from the bench and walked over to them. "Edward, if we're going back, we need to establish some rules." "I'm listening." First, Luna will only come to the company when I'm working, and only in the areas designated for her. Agreed. Second, any employee who treats Luna disrespectfully will be confronted immediately by me or by you. Completely agreed. Third, Luna is still a child. This cannot affect her studies or her playtime. Of course. Luna clapped her hands, returning to the cheerful girl Edward knew. So I can go back to drawing in your office? You can. In fact, Luna, would you like to help me choose new colors to redecorate my office? Really? Can I really choose? We can choose together. You said my house needed more color. My office needs it too. Carla watched the interaction between Edward and Luna with suppressed emotion. Edward, may I ask one more question? Please, why are you doing all this? For Luna, for me, for this project. Why is it so important to you? Edward took a moment to answer, carefully choosing his words. Because you two reminded me of something I had forgotten. What? First, that success is not measured only in numbers, that a company is only worthwhile if it makes the world a little better, and that I was more emotionally paralyzed than physically. Luna approached Edward's chair and, without asking permission, climbed onto his lap. It was the first time anyone had done that since the accident, and Edward felt an almost overwhelming emotion. Edward, she said, resting her head on his shoulder, you're walking better now. Am I? You are. Not with your feet, but with your heart. And the heart is more important. Carla approached and, in a spontaneous gesture, kissed Edward's forehead. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For believing in us, for defending us, for making us feel important. Edward closed his eyes, holding Luna carefully and feeling Carla's affection. For the first time in 3 years, he felt part of something bigger than himself. He felt part of a family. You are important, he said, his voice choked. You are the most important people in my life. That afternoon, sitting in a simple park on the outskirts of the city, with a girl on his lap and a woman by his side, Edward Morrison finally understood what Luna meant about walking again. He had stopped walking long before the accident. He had stopped feeling, connecting, loving. Now, even without moving his legs, he was walking towards a life worth living. So, Luna said, raising her head to look at him, shall we go back to your company tomorrow? We shall, Edward confirmed, and this time we'll show everyone how a real company should treat its most special people. 6 months passed since the incident with Richard, and Mendonça Tech had transformed almost unrecognizably. The Technological Inclusion Project, now officially called Digital Sunflowers in honor of Luna's favorite flower, had become one of the company's most successful. Edward looked out the window of his new office, now decorated with vibrant colors chosen by Luna and cheerful paintings she had made herself. The main wall displayed a sunflower mural that Luna had created with the help of a professional artist hired by the company. Edward, are you nervous? Luna asked, appearing at the door with her official Child Happiness Specialist folder. She wore a light blue blazer over a yellow dress, an outfit she had chosen herself for the day's event. A little, Edward admitted. It's a very important day. It was the day of the official launch of the Digital Sunflowers project for investors, partners, and the media. The company auditorium was prepared to receive 200 people, including representatives from the city government, non-governmental organizations, and most importantly, families from the beneficiary communities. Carla entered the room, elegant in a navy blue dress that Edward had insisted the company buy for her. In recent months, she had become indispensable, not only for the social project, but for the company's entire corporate social responsibility strategy. Everything's ready downstairs, she reported. The audio-visual team finished testing. The guests are arriving. And she hesitated. Your ex-wife is on the confirmed guest list. Edward felt a slight pang in his stomach, but not the panic he would have felt months ago. Marina confirmed her presence? She did. She's working on a story about social responsibility for her magazine. Edward nodded. In recent months, he had prepared for the possibility of meeting Marina again. She had become a respected journalist, specializing in corporate sustainability. It was natural that she would know about the project. Heart Daddy, Luna said, using the affectionate nickname she had created for Edward. You don't need to worry. You're not the same person she left anymore. Edward smiled. Luna always managed to simplify complex issues with her intuitive wisdom. "You're right, little one. I've changed a lot." "We've all changed," Carla added, adjusting Edward's tie. "Now we're a real family." It was true. In recent months, Carla and Luna had moved to a larger apartment in Kensington, closer to the company and the private school where Luna now studied on a full scholarship. Edward had insisted on helping with the expenses, not as a boss but as family. They spent weekends together at the mansion, which had been completely transformed. The white walls had given way to cheerful colors. The formal garden was replaced by free-form flower beds full of sunflowers, and the empty rooms were filled with life, laughter, and love. "It's time," Anna Beatrice announced, appearing at the door. "The auditorium is packed." Edward walked through corridors he no longer recognized. The sterile walls had been decorated with photos of social projects, drawings by beneficiary children, and testimonials from families. The company had humanized itself in a way that impacted not only visitors, but the employees themselves. The auditorium was indeed packed. Edward recognized familiar faces from the corporate world, but also saw many new faces. Mothers from the communities where the project operated, children participating in the programs, community leaders who had become partners. And there in the third row, Marina, still beautiful, still elegant, but there was something different in her gaze when she saw him. No longer pity or discomfort, but genuine curiosity and perhaps a touch of admiration. Edward stepped onto the stage with the ease he had regained in recent months. His presentation was technical at first, showing impressive numbers. Over 5,000 people impacted, 15 labs installed, 80% success rate in the courses. But when he began to speak about the philosophy behind the project, his voice changed. "A year ago, I was a man who had stopped walking in many ways," he said, his voice echoing through the silent auditorium. "I thought leadership was control, that success was just profit, that innovation came only from degrees and formal experience." He looked at Carla, sitting in the front row next to Luna. "Then I met two people who taught me that true leadership is serving, that success is a positive impact on people's lives, and that the best innovations come from authentic and diverse perspectives." The presentation continued with emotional videos of families transformed by the project. Mothers who got better jobs after the courses, children who discovered talents in programming, young people who created small businesses using digital skills. But the most important aspect of this project, Edward said, approaching the end of his speech, is not the numbers. It's what we learned about human potential, about dignity, about family. He paused, looking around the auditorium. "Therefore, to conclude, I would like to call to the stage the person who taught me the most about these values, someone who, at 9 years old, has more wisdom about human connection than I developed in 42 years of life." Luna stood up from the front row, walking with firm steps towards the stage. Edward noticed a murmur of surprise in the audience. Some executives seemed confused, but the families from the community smiled with recognition. "Everyone," Luna said into the microphone, her voice clear and confident, "my name is Luna Sterling, and I am the child happiness specialist here at the company." Some affectionate laughter echoed through the auditorium. "When I met Edward a few months ago, he was very sad. He couldn't walk properly. He didn't smile with his eyes, and he lived alone in a very big and very white house." Edward felt his eyes well up, remembering that rainy night that changed everything. "I promised to help him walk again, not with his feet, which sometimes don't work, but with his heart. Because when the heart walks well, the whole person walks well." The silence in the auditorium was complete. Luna continued, with the naturalness of someone talking to friends. "Edward learned a very important thing, that sometimes people who seem different, who live in simple places, or who don't have much money, those people can have very good ideas too." She looked at Carla, who was discreetly wiping away tears. "My mom always knew important things about technology and education, but no one asked her because she was just a cleaner. Now she works here, and her ideas help thousands of people." Luna turned to Edward, who was beside her on stage. "Edward, did you manage to walk again?" Edward took the microphone, his voice choked with emotion. "I did, Luna. Thanks to you and your mom, I managed to walk again." "And now you can walk along with us too," Luna said, addressing the audience again. "Because this company is no longer just about computers and money. It's about making friends, helping families, and planting sunflowers. She paused, considering her next words carefully. My mom always says that sunflowers are special because they always look for the sun, even on cloudy days. Today I want to tell you that sometimes people can also be sunflowers. Sometimes we just need someone who believes in us to be able to look at the sun again. The auditorium erupted in applause. It wasn't the typical polite applause of corporate events, but a sincere and emotional ovation. Hardened executives wiped their eyes. Mothers from the communities openly wept. Company employees applauded standing. Edward looked at the auditorium and saw Marina also applauding, tears streaming down her face. When their gazes met, she nodded slightly and smiled. A genuine smile without sadness or pity, but of recognition and respect. Carla went up to the stage and hugged Luna, then Edward. For a moment, the three stood united in the center of the stage, an unconventional family that had transformed not only their own lives, but an entire company and whole communities. "Thank you, Luna," Edward said into the microphone, "for teaching me to walk again. For teaching me that family has nothing to do with blood, but with love, respect, and mutual care." He looked at Carla. "And thank you, Carla, for showing me that true success is when we manage to uplift other people along with us." When they left the stage, Edward felt completely transformed. The bitter man who had met Luna that rainy night no longer existed. In his place was a man who had rediscovered purpose, joy, and love. Luna's promise had been fulfilled. Edward had learned to walk again, not with his feet but with his heart. And on this journey, he had found something far more valuable than he ever imagined: a true family. A year after the official launch of the Digital Sunflowers project, Edward woke to the familiar sound of laughter coming from the garden. It was 7 o'clock on a Saturday morning in May, and Luna was teaching Mrs. Constance how to plant sunflowers in a new flower bed they had prepared the previous week. Edward smiled, putting on his bathrobe and going to his bedroom window, which now offered a completely different view. The garden that was once formal and lifeless had become a colorful paradise. Sunflowers of various heights mingled with other flowers Luna had chosen, creating a cheerful mosaic that welcomed the first rays of morning sun. Carla appeared at the bedroom door, bringing coffee on a tray. She wore simple pajamas and her hair down, but Edward thought he had never seen her more beautiful. "Good morning, sleepyhead," she said, kissing him lightly on the lips. "Your heart daughter is determined to turn the entire garden into a sunflower field." "Our daughter," Edward corrected, pulling Carla into an embrace. "And I think that's a wonderful idea." In the past 12 months, many things had changed, but the most important had happened only 2 months ago. On a rainy night similar to the one they met, Edward had proposed to Carla. It wasn't a traditional proposal with an expensive ring and a romantic dinner. It was in the middle of a project meeting, when she was presenting data on the program's impact on beneficiary families. "Carla," he had interrupted, making her stop in the middle of the presentation, "would you like to marry me?" The room had fallen silent for a few seconds, until Luna, who was drawing in the corner of the room, clapped her hands and shouted, "Finally!" Carla had laughed, cried, and said yes all at once. The wedding would take place in August, in a simple ceremony in the mansion's garden, surrounded by the people who truly mattered in their lives. "Edward," Carla called, pulling him from his reverie, "we have a surprise for you." "What kind of surprise?" Luna ran into the room, her hands dirty with soil and a radiant smile on her face. "Heart Daddy, close your eyes." Edward obeyed, feeling Luna take his hand. She guided him to the garden, Carla pushing his wheelchair. The scent of flowers and wet earth filled his nostrils. "You can open them." Edward opened his eyes and was speechless. In the center of the garden, where there had once been only grass, there was now a hand-painted wooden sign. On it, in colorful letters that were clearly Luna's work, was written, "The Morrison Sterling Family Garden." "Do you like it?" Luna asked, anxious. "I painted it all myself, and my mom helped me with the harder letters." Edward felt his eyes well up with tears. "It's perfect, Luna, absolutely perfect." "And there's more," Carla said, pointing to a corner of the garden Edward hadn't noticed before. There was a small garden bench, positioned so it could receive the morning sun and the afternoon shade. Beside the bench, 3 sunflowers had been planted together, their stems naturally intertwined. "Those 3 sunflowers are us," Luna explained. Even when they grow very tall, they'll stay together, always looking at the sun. Edward moved his chair closer to the bench and extended his arms, embracing his two women at the same time. How lucky was I to find you? You didn't find us, Luna corrected with her impeccable logic. You were looking for the sun, and we were looking for the sun too. Then we met halfway. Carla laughed, kissing her daughter's head. Philosophy at 10 years old. Imagine when she's an adult. She's going to change the world, Edward said with conviction, just as you two changed mine. They spent the morning in the garden, Luna playing among the flowers, Carla and Edward talking about plans for the wedding and the future. The Digital Sunflowers project had expanded to 5 states, and other companies were creating similar programs. Edward had become a national reference in corporate social responsibility. But what he was most proud of was knowing that it had all started with the generous heart of a 9-year-old girl. Edward, Carla said, pointing to the entrance gate, I think we have visitors. It was Marina, accompanied by a small film crew. She waved from the entrance, clearly waiting for permission to approach. Edward signaled for her to enter. In recent months, he and Marina had rekindled a respectful friendship. She was documenting the social impact of the project for a television program on conscious entrepreneurship. Sorry to bother you on the weekend, Marina said, approaching the group in the garden. But we wanted to film some scenes in the garden, if you didn't mind. Of course, Edward agreed. Luna, do you want to show Marina how the sunflowers turned out? Luna jumped like a spring, excited to show her garden to the cameras. As she guided Marina and the crew through the space, Edward and Carla watched from the bench. Did you ever imagine your life would be like this when you met me that night? Carla asked. Edward thought for a moment. Never. That night I could barely imagine a future. I thought my life had ended with the accident. And now? Now I know my life truly began that night. Not the accident, but meeting you two. Carla took his hand, intertwining their fingers. Edward, can I confess something? Always cool. When Luna told me about you, I was worried. I thought she was deluding herself, that a rich man would never truly be interested in us. And what changed your opinion? The way you looked at her. How you really listened to what she said. And then how you treated me at work. Never as charity, always with respect. Edward kissed her hand. You saved me, Carla, in every possible way. Marina approached again, the crew already finishing filming Luna among the sunflowers. Edward, can I ask one last question for the interview? She asked. Of course. Marina turned on the small recorder she carried. If you could give advice to other people who have experienced similar traumas to yours, what would it be? Edward looked at Luna, who was showing her flowers to the cameraman, then at Carla, who smiled proudly seeing him being interviewed. I would say that sometimes we stop walking long before our legs stop working, he said, repeating the words Luna had used so many months ago. And that true recovery doesn't come from doctors or therapies, no matter how important they are. It comes from genuine human connections, from purpose, from love. And what is your most specific advice? Edward smiled. Look for sunflowers in your life. Sunflowers? People who always look for the sun, even on cloudy days. People who see possibilities where others see only problems. And when you find those people, let them teach you to look at the sun too. Marina turned off the recorder, clearly moved. Thank you, Edward. This will be one of my best stories. After Marina and her team left, the family went back inside the house. Edward prepared lunch with Luna's help, who had become an excellent kitchen assistant, while Carla finished some work reports. In the afternoon, Ronald visited with his family. Beatrice, the driver's daughter, had become a great friend of Luna's, and the two played in the garden while the adults talked on the porch. Mr. Edward, Ronald said, watching the girls run among the sunflowers, do you remember how things were before? I do. Why? Because sometimes I look at you now and it's like you're a completely different person. Edward reflected on Ronald's words. It was true. The bitter and isolated man who had met Luna that rainy night truly no longer existed. In his place was a fulfilled man, surrounded by love, with purpose and hope. As the sun began to set, painting the garden with golden hues, Edward called Luna and Carla to join him on the special bench. Girls, he said, embracing them both, I have something important to say. What is it, Heart Daddy? Luna asked. I want you to know that you gave me the greatest gift anyone can give another person. What gift? Carla asked. You gave me a reason to wake up smiling every day. You gave me a family. You gave me life. Luna snuggled into his embrace. And you gave us a family too, Edward. Before it was just me and my mom. Now we are 3 sunflowers. Carla kissed Edward's face. Forever 3 sunflowers. Forever, Edward agreed, watching the sun set behind his sunflowers, knowing that no matter how many cloudy days came, they would always have each other to find the light again. The end. Dear listeners, we hope the story of Edward, Carla, and Luna has touched your hearts as much as it has touched ours. This narrative about unexpected encounters, overcoming adversity, and the transformative power of true love reminds us that sometimes the biggest changes in our lives come from the simplest gestures and the most improbable people. Like Luna's sunflowers, we can all choose to look to the sun, even on the cloudiest days. And as Edward discovered, sometimes we need to stop walking with our feet to learn to walk with our hearts. To continue this emotional journey with us, we have prepared a special playlist with equally captivating stories about family, overcoming challenges, and second chances. You can find it here on the channel, right next to this story. If this narrative awakened something special in you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like the video. Every day we bring unique stories that explore the complexity and beauty of human life. Tell us in the comments what moment in the story touched you the most. Have you experienced a similar transformative experience to Edward's? Your stories and reflections enrich our community and inspire future narratives. Don't miss our upcoming content. We have wonderful stories waiting for you. Until next time, keep being like the sunflowers, always seeking the light,